Glad you could join us today on Eartfile. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. Mobile phones have changed our lives. Computers have changed our history, and technology has changed the way we live. We are surrounded by electronics in our private and working lives. The fact is, not many bother about where all these end up, but you should. When you look at a computer or cell phone, it doesn't seem dangerous. Typically, only the outer casing is visible, but what is inside is what poses a threat to the environment, the people, and animals. Electronics products are jam-packed with heavy metals, semi-metals, and various chemical compounds that can leak into soil and become hazardous. The risks, the benefits, and the way forward are some of the areas we'll be focusing today on the program. Do stay with us. Adopting information technology may be desirable, but there is an ugly side to it, which has to do with hazards arising in e-waste. Between 20 and 50 million tons of e-waste are generated globally, and it has been predicted that by 2016, developing countries would produce twice the amount of e-waste produced in developed countries. Though Nigeria does not manufacture information technology consumables, large quantities are being imported into the country on a daily basis. With the importation of such goods, it is only natural that when their useful life expires, they would become waste, or more appropriately, e-waste. Currently, Nigeria has a backlog of e-waste that are posing a lot of challenges to the environment and human health. It is a thing of concern that a lot of Nigerians are not aware of hazards associated with e-waste. It is not uncommon to find young men rummaging through waste heaps containing all sorts of wastes. The turnover rates of waste from electronic gadgets and the consequential health hazard effect on human life and the environment caused especially on the soil cannot be overemphasized.
In a realistic way, consider the population of Nigeria. Consider the number of electronics and gadgets that are about. Consider the number of people who carry 3-4 mobile phones, and just consider the turnaround period from some of these implements. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you have new brands, new types coming up, and people keep changing. What happens with what is abandoned?
Released statistics has shown that approximately 100,000 tons of e-waste is illegally brought into Nigeria every year through Lagos and other ports in the country. An e-waste country assessment for Nigeria published in 2012 further identified that about 1.1 million tons of e-waste are generated annually, which is far more than the combined e-waste volume generated by most other countries in the ECOWAS region. There is also an absence of infrastructure for appropriate e-waste management and absence of any framework for end-of-life product take-back.
There are items that before this time have been used and reused and repaired, they've all gone bad. And so we'll have them heaped up in a container somewhere, well secure, so that we know the effects of letting that thing go, without being properly disposed of. So we now have the first thing is, you don't even have a collector, a licensed collector. You don't have a licensed recycler in Nigeria today that we can talk about. One is in the process. But so we are having now, if you look at the cost, I'm a banker, you look at the storage cost of those items, they shouldn't be there. We don't even know now what the hell hazards are of living there, and people are making contact with them. So these are the issues we're worried about in those kind of things. The earlier we kickstart this thing, look, when you talk about this environmental thing, we need to be running 150 kilometers per hour, not 10 kilometers, So we need to fast track it.
Currently, many remove the valuable metals from equipment and send the remaining scrap to landfills or incinerators. Without adequate protections, workers dismantling discarded electronic equipment are exposed to many chemicals and their negative health effects. From global debate, e-waste has been identified as a problem, adding that it was not only a problem from the health perspective, but also from the ethical point of view. In the European Union, there are legal regulations on the handling of e-waste, and that on account of this, most companies and agencies that want to avoid the cost of disposing them devise other means of dumping them. These e-wastes are either sold as second-hand goods, tested and non-tested, or donated to institutions in the country.
One reason why we are getting worried again is that the developed countries target Nigeria and West Africa in particular to be dumping. So, since Africa is a soft spot for those who dump e-waste, we are trying to educate, strengthen the capacity of government officers responsible for shipment of waste to know what to do.
Electronics consumption is accelerating for new and second-hand products, helping to bridge the digital divide. However, eventually all electrical and electronic products will become e-waste. Due to rapid advances in technology, there is a much wider range of products available and new versions of existing goods are being launched constantly. Therefore, the rate at which electronics are being discarded and sheer volume of waste has increased drastically as well. This electronic waste or e-waste is being exported to developing countries where crude recycling techniques expose both the workers and the environment to dangerous chemicals.
Up to now, the biggest problem or the biggest challenges that we've had in Nigeria is lack of awareness. Even the term e-waste is not well recognized in Nigeria. Unfortunately, e-waste still today contains hazardous materials that can have a negative impact on both the environment but also on humans. Cathode ray tubes contain arsenic, and currently what's happening is some of these scrap dealers are actually destroying these CRTs and in effect getting poisoning from the arsenic. In very small doses is causing dermatitis, but in large doses arsenic actually causes death. Aside from that, it's obviously a global impact. Some of the gases that have been released from these electronics, particularly when they're being burnt, which is very common currently in Nigeria, a lot of this e-waste gets incinerated at the end of a life. These gases that have been let off into the environment are causing a global problem, which needs to be tackled now.